I would have to start by asking, this is a complete different world to Trolljägarna. What drew you to this film?
I mean, first of all, it was just a screenplay. I mean, I love the complexity of having to create suspense, tension. The characters were intriguing. I love the opportunity to create a visual style that I was completely in control of, deciding every single color and camera angle and everything. It was just such a great, fun thing to do. And also I wanted to prove to myself and others, I guess, that I could do a movie that was just where the director was, in a way, stepping forward, as opposed to on Trollhunter I had to step backwards to be able to make that movie work. I had to take a step back and to make it real. And this one was requiring a directorial voice, which I was very intrigued by.
Cool. The similarity between this and Trollhunter is that the use of inanimate objects. I mean, in Trollhunter you've got like the trolls, and here you have the corpse. How does this work storytelling-wise with an inanimate object as a corpse? How could you use that? How do you how do you work with it?
I mean, in practical terms, it's mostly Alwyn Kelly, who is the actress playing Jane. She's kind of there for. She was there for like. We shot this for 5 weeks, and she was there for like 3.5 weeks, I guess, lying on the table. And we had a lot of. We had a doll that was modeled exactly after her. She had to go into this session with prosthetics people where she was molded. It was molded, like made a mold out of her, and it was all and it was worked on for weeks and weeks and weeks to get the skin pristine and everything. And then we had for the fire sequence we had like a black version of that doll that was for the contrast with the fire, because we were going to take the black doll away, and then we were going to add her on top of that, and then we were going to put flames on top of that again. There were a lot of flames in that scene, physically on set, but of course it's been added a lot. Actually, one of the main references we used was from Let the Right One In. There was a fire scene there, and that was our working reference when we were doing that scene.
And that is a good scene as well.
Yes, absolutely. It's a wonderful movie.
One thing I was thinking about, location-wise, I mean, in Trollhunter you've got all the enormous wide space of the Norwegian landscape, and here you're all like in one tight, crammed, almost chamber-like piece here. Did that have any effect on you as a filmmaker, with the difference of spaces and locations?
Oh, definitely. I mean, this had to be choreographed extremely carefully, where the actors move and when they say the lines. While Trollhunter was, they both have precise screenplays, so you always stick to that. But on Trollhunter, we had to deviate from the screenplay when we were shooting it to make it authentic and not to make it feel like it's been planned or read. Well, in this case, we had to do the opposite. We had to really plan that out extremely carefully. So every morning, like 5:30 a.m. before, I've been planning this for months anyway, but every morning, 5:30 to 7, I was sitting by myself and with the DOP, drawing up extremely careful lines of where the actors were moving and at what point in the script they were saying this line and that line and where the camera would be. And we were working very, very carefully on preparing every moment. So it was to me it was the opposite way of working than the Trollhunter. And I love being able to design a set that was purposely designed for the way I wanted to shoot it. I knew that I was going to be using a lot of low angles up on these people standing over her. So the way the walls were designed and the ceiling and everything had to, and the way the angles of the room had to be designed was all very carefully planned out of specific purposes. So,
Interesting. Should we take some questions from people in the audience, if you have any questions?
How was it working with Brian Cox and Emil Hirsch?
It was an amazing experience because they're such natural talents and they're also so experienced, both of them. So they would know exactly what to do with the character. The characters were very well written, so the psychology worked for them. That's why they got on board the movie in the first place. But they just come on set and they're so prepared, and it's such an easy thing. With Brian, he was shooting a movie just before ours. He came in, he landed on a Sunday. He had a doctor's appointment on Monday, so I didn't get to talk to him then. Tuesday, he wanted to take a break. Wednesday, I got to meet him, and Thursday, Friday, we worked together, and then we shot on Monday. So it was like, and then he went off, and 3 days after our shoot ended, he went off to a television version of War and Peace. It's like, he's insane. I mean, I don't know any I've never heard of an actor who works as much as he does. But they both have a great sense of humor on set. They joke and they're friendly and they're just a pleasure to be around. But you know, they're very tough actors as well, not to work with, but they know what they're doing. So it's you have to be prepared. And me being a novice director in their eyes was in the beginning a little bit tricky, but they started to trust me fairly quickly. So.
What was up with the song? Where that came from?
I have no idea where that came from actually. It was just something that, it was in the screenplay. It was exactly that song in the screenplay, and I didn't write the screenplay, it was an American screenplay. So they found that song and they wrote, you know, the kind of a lot of the scenes around that song. And thematically it just is amazing in a way what this text is, and it's so creepy. And we found different versions of it, and the version we were allowed to license, we slowed down, we sped it up to twice the speed, so it gets this kind of creepy voice that the original recording actually didn't have.
How did you get in contact with this fantastic screenplay?
Since Trollhunter was a real breakout hit in Hollywood, fortunately, so I got agents and managers and stuff like that there. So I remember walking out of the movie The Conjuring in the summer of 2013, and I literally called my agents. I was so inspired. I thought it was such a clever, concise way of directing horror, so much different than the fad of handheld, which I'm obviously also part of. But it was such a relief to see the movie The Conjuring, because it was such a classically told horror movie with very classical way of scaring people. And I called them and said, let's find a real horror screenplay now. And a month later they found, I got Jane Doe on my table, and I was like, I got in bed. I remember reading it in bed, like in 45 minutes. Usually I take 4 or 5 hours to read a screenplay. But it was such a speedy, scary damn read. And and then I called my agent and said, okay, I gotta talk to these producers. Then I realized I was working with the producers on another movie I'm shooting in the spring now, in April. I was already working with them, preparing that movie. I didn't realize that so then it was a very easy sell. They already loved Trollhunter, obviously, and it was like, okay, here we go.
So, what is your next movie then?
It's a movie called Mortal, which is an action, adventure, fantasy movie in Norway, like a road movie. It's not so dissimilar to Trollhunter, but it will be much, much more controlled. But it's dealing with northern mythology again in a modern setting. It's, keeping it a little bit.
Which was your favorite scene to shoot and why?
There are a couple of scenes, and for different reasons. Like, one scene that was amazing to me was just a scene that I was a little bit afraid of shooting was in the two guys just sitting in the elevator, just talking about stuff, about their life and their mother, and and in the middle of this intense sequence of horror in a way, and they just deliver this beautiful scene with, to me, amazing performances. And it was just like all I needed to do was just find a couple of nice camera angles on them, and they were just like, wow. I remember everybody were like so taken by that scene when we were shooting it. But as a director, the scene I like I'm most proud of, from my point of view, is the build-up to them pulling off the skin of, because it's piece by piece by piece building tension and suspense and making sure that you kind of follow everything. So directorially, I'm most proud of that scene.
Great gaps.
No, the survival horror has been done like 1,000 times. So when you made this movie, how did you when you sat and this is gonna be my movie, like it's not gonna be one in the thousands of movies that are survival horror. How did you work around it to make it yours?
Very good question. I found inspiration in the movies that I love, and in the script, and God, it's a tricky one. You always hope that a movie will stand out. You can never know. I think I remember reading an interview with Steven Spielberg, and I totally agree with this, where he said, "I'm driven by fear of failure." And I'm constantly driven by fear of failure. I mean, I know that if I make one mistake, the whole movie can drop. So you're always fighting to make every scene the best it can be, and because your career is either going up or down based on your last movie and your opportunities to make another one. But I felt like it was very important to make a stylistically very controlled movie where every shot has a meaning. I mean, every time I put the camera up, I knew it had a specific purpose. And because I do find that a lot of films, people are just shooting stuff. They're just shooting the action, and they're not really paying attention to where the camera goes. And this was only shot with one camera the whole time. And I don't like shooting with multiple cameras, for example, because you lose a lot of attention to detail in every facet of filmmaking. In my opinion, others have different opinions, obviously. So to shoot something like this, I just needed to tell it piece by piece. Yeah.
Did you, like, when you read the screenplay, did you like see it and was, oh shit, this is so cliche, or like you had to like go around it, or was it you just made it and like shot it like you wanted it to?
No, I mean, there are scenes that are, more classically horror scenes. Okay, you're building up suspense to a big jump scare. There are several of those, and you have to do that. You can't make a horror movie where you don't have jump scares. It just doesn't. The audience, I don't feel if I don't get that jump, it's kind of sad. But it's part of the horror experience. So there are definitely moments like that in the film. Where...
With it being an American screenplay, was there anything you could put into it to give it a more European feel? Was there anything you could bring to the screenplay, or was it like locked screenplay, here you go, screenplay, shoot?
No, we definitely had lots of conversations about the screenplay, where we had roundtable conversations for many, many days, discussing every piece of the script to make sure that it delivered on different levels. It delivered the psychology and the suspense and the jump scares and the everything. They were specifically looking for a European director. They only interviewed European directors. So this happens a lot in Hollywood. There is of course, Luc Besson's company, Robocorp. They only hire European directors. They don't even interview American directors. So it's that they wanted to have a European flair by definition, a certain point of view that somehow, for some reason, they thought Americans wouldn't do. I don't know what that is, but Scandi Noir, which is obviously practically originating in Sweden. It's something that is truly popular and benefiting everybody in Scandinavia.
So I'm of course very happy with the fact that it's a horror movie, but what made you turn to horror in the first place? How come? Why?
I mean, I always loved horror movies. I mean, I grew up on the classic horror movies and some non-classic horror movies. I was watching everything when I was a kid, anything I could get over. You know, it was the VHS time when you would get like terrible copies of Evil Dead and From Beyond and whatever. It was, you know, it was so very inspiring from childhood. So I always loved horror. So I was very happy to be able to do a horror movie, like a pure. Because I think horror movies are a very underappreciated genre because it's truly a film director's genre. Because you have to create a mood and a tension and certain things that oftentimes action movies, dramas, thrillers don't really need. You can rely entirely on the story, but you need another layer of some dread or something undefinable that is like you don't really know what it is even. Sometimes that is entirely only in horror movies. So I think it's a very artistic medium, personally. Yeah.
Was it easier or harder working in the Hollywood environment than in the Norwegian film environment?
No, it's been. I mean, I hear these horror stories of, you know, Norwegians especially because I know them, who go to America and they do a movie and it's a horrific experience. They get the movie gets taken away from them and blah blah. I had nothing of that. I was so happy to work with. I have extremely supportive producers who trusted my vision and were only every time.